Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. Today we will be talking about how to promote your business online in association with the UK Domain and startups.co.uk. And I am your host today, Bianca Miller-Cole. To give you a bit of an agenda for today's session, we will be talking a little bit about myself and my experience and why I'm the right person to give you an insight into building an online brand. We'll also be talking about who the UK Domain is and what they do, as well as various points on how to build your brand online and how to really ensure that you are doing the very best for your business and capturing your audience. So, to get started, I want to give you a little bit of an insight into who I am and my journey. So I started my first business back in 2012. I believed that there was a need for better personal branding services in the UK. I had become, frustrated by the fact that there were people who were excellent candidates for improving their career trajectory and improving their business, but they didn't really understand the importance or value in building their personal brand or marketing themselves in the right way to ensure that they had the visibility and the reputation to really push their brand forward, whether that was as someone in a career or whether that was as a business owner. So I started the B Group to really help individuals to market themselves in the very best way. Then, in 2014, I went on to a show called The Apprentice, where I fought very hard to get into the final and pitched my idea to redefine nude hosiery. Again, being frustrated by the fact that I couldn't get nude hosiery to match my skin tone, I looked around and realised there were lots of women struggling with the same thing of varying ethnicity and skin tone, and so I wanted to make a diverse product that would suit everyone. I then created a book called Self-Made, Definitive Guide to Business Startup Success, which really helps individuals like yourselves who really want to grow their business and really want to understand the steps to take to make their business successful. And I was lucky enough to have the UK Domain actually in the book, delivering really important information on how to build your online brand. And today we're going to be focused on that online branding chapter. There are a few other things that I can mention, but most of them are on the screen. But I have recently been lucky enough to be named as a Forbes 30 under 30, as well as a top 50 leader via the Financial Times and a power list person for LinkedIn. So I have a lot of experience in building a brand. And most of my experience, if I'm frankly honest, in building businesses, it hasn't been with lots of money to build that marketing plan. I haven't had that big pot of gold. I unfortunately didn't have that Lord Sugar £250,000. So I had to build my brand from scratch. And I really want to give you some of my top tips on how to build a really good marketing plan and how to really make sure your business stands out from the crowd. And so today, as the brand ambassador for the UK Domain, I'm going to be talking about how to build your brand online and what it means to be an established British UK business and how to really use the fact that you are a UK business online to really ensure that your brand stands out. There is a lot of noise out there. We want to make sure you're getting to your end customer. So, I want to give you a bit of an insight into who NormaNet are. So NormaNet manage over 12 million domains ending in .uk. They're the third largest domain registry in the world, and they have helped over 3 million businesses and millions more individuals in really making sure they have a domain, a UK domain that stands out and gets the attention of their end consumer. They help a lot of small businesses understand the importance of being online. Now, in this current economic climate, it's more important than it ever was to have a really strong online brand. It's like having a really good shopfront, but online. We know that unfortunately, currently, a lot of retailers are having real issues in the market. They're struggling to maintain their business. And that's why it's so important to understand how you can capture your audience online as well as offline to really achieve great success. There's a few stats that have now appeared on your page, and that includes that over 80% of consumers search online for products or services before making a purchasing decision. And I'm one of those consumers. I'll look online first, I'll do my research. Sometimes I'll go into store, but often I'm happy and confident to buy something online. So you want to make sure that you are capturing your audience in a variety of ways, online and offline. But it's so important that online you realize that you can actually capture that audience who are sitting at home, who are commuting on the train, who are at the office, who have a laptop, have a phone, have a tablet, and really want to do some research. And you don't want to lose that end consumer by not having that presence online, by not having a vibrant website, or by not having the correct domain that resonates with the consumer here in the UK. And so, without further ado, we're going to talk about where and how to start building your brand online. I think the first point is really about understanding your customer. So often people have a fantastic idea and they create a solution to a problem that they have, but they haven't really understood whether there is a customer base out there who also feel like they have that problem. So it's so important to really understand or check that there is a problem out there that other people require a solution for. As opposed to just solving a problem that only exists for you, you want to make sure that there's a customer base out there who want what you have to offer and are willing to part with some hard-earned money to do so. And so there are a few things to consider. We have, where do they buy what you have to offer currently? So that's if you have a product or service that currently exists from someone else, where are they currently going to buy that product or service? Are they going to a shop? Are they going online? Are they on Facebook? Are they on Instagram? Where do they currently find that product or service? It's really important you understand where they're going to ensure that you are able to capture them in that particular area. So really think, unless your product is really innovative and has never been done before, there's a lot of research you can do to understand where that customer is. So look around, do the research, find out where they would usually look for what you have to offer and how much they'll be willing to spend on that product or service. It's so important that you look at the price point because price sensitivity is one of those things that can stop someone from actually purchasing from you. People look at price, and online it's so much easier to get price comparison than you would have before. Previously, you found an item in a shop, you would have had to go shop to shop to shop to decide whether that was good value. Now you can go online, type that product or service into Google and often find the prices. So you want to ensure that you truly understand where your customer would want to find you, what they want, does it really solve the problem that they have, and how much would they be willing to spend? And it's so important you understand that before you even get started, because you can't create a marketing plan if you don't know where your customers currently reside and where they're currently researching for your product or service. So consider making a focus group. That doesn't have to be in person. Now I find that Facebook in particular is great for focus groups because you can really get people engaged and you can ask them questions. Where would they buy that item? How much would they be willing to spend? When we looked at diversifying Bianca Miller London away from hosiery and we were launching our nail polish brand, I went on Facebook and I asked people how much would they be willing to spend? What sort of colours would they want? What would they look for in a nail varnish brand to convert them from the brand that they currently purchase from? All of those questions are so important. So get a focus group together in person or online, but make sure they're not just friends and family. Get people that have an external perspective that aren't just going to support you because it's you. Then research is your friend. The more you know, the more prepared you will be, and that is so true. People don't spend enough time on research often and they just go into a new business idea without really understanding the market. So I would like to encourage you to really understand what your brand can do for the future and look to the future. Ultimately, where would you like your brand to be in X years? Have a 2, 5, 10-year plan and think about the vision. So ultimately, where would I expect my business to be and what do I need to do in order to get there? And who would you like your brand to most resonate with? So it's so important you understand your target demographic. You have an audience in mind, You know, for example, with Bianca Miller-London with hosiery, I knew it was women of a certain age that had a certain income that would want to buy hosiery. And therefore, I was able to create a marketing plan that would ensure that our marketing resonated with that audience. It's so important you understand your demographic. Often, you can't be a product or service for everyone. There is a niche. And if you have a niche, you want to make sure that your product or service is suitable and marketed accordingly. Think about how you can engage them. If you don't have a large budget for billboards and advertising, what other ways could you engage them? Is it using social media? Is it using things like leafleting or flyering? Is it actually going and getting a database and engaging with a database, or collaborating with a brand that has an existing database that is relevant to what you're trying to sell? Really think about that and create an initial action plan. Now, to break that down further, we're going to look at some of the key areas. So the first being social media. I think social media is a fantastic asset. Never before have you been able to contact CEOs and COOs and financial directors and decision makers without social media. Never before has it been this easy. Prior to having something like LinkedIn, Facebook or Twitter, you would have had a lot of gatekeepers to contend with. But now you can actually connect with them, network with them, and send messages online. So really make sure you're utilizing that. So let's give you a little bit of a run through for the different social media options. We have Facebook. One of the most widely used networks. It's free, it's easy to get onto, and is very visual and directs users to your website. Fundamentally, all of the things I'm going to be saying, they don't mean you don't have to have a website. You do have to have a website. It's so important that your social media links to something. Your social media is a marketing tool. It's a way of getting your customers interested and then send them to your website so they can get the real information and eventually, hopefully, make a buying decision. So Facebook is great for that. You can interact with people. You can have your business Facebook page as well as your personal page, should you choose to. Maybe your brand is about you. Maybe it's your personal brand. Maybe you're a speaker. That means you still need to have your personal page and your company page. Or if it's actually a product or service, the same is true. Personal and company page. But focus on your company page. How can you interact with your users? How can you get them participating in really building your brand? How can you get them to ask questions or make comments or make suggestions? You really want to make sure they're interacting with you. And I think Facebook is a great way to do that. It's also a great way to do advertising because you really have ownership over how much you spend and the demographic you choose to advertise with. And they have great analytics on there. So it's a great way to see where you're hitting the nail on the head, and what you should be doing more, and maybe what you should be doing less of. In addition, I would say Facebook has great groups. So you might have your existing audience that are already on your page, that you've attracted to your page, but you may want to engage additional audiences via Facebook groups. People in those groups are maybe interested in a particular niche. It might be food, for example. If you have a food brand and they're interested in a food page, you know that if you post on there about your food brand, it might resonate with them. So really think about how you can encourage people to interact with you. Then we have Twitter. So Twitter is great for business. It requires more frequent attention, I would say. I think it definitely needs you to be on there regularly interacting and regularly posting. But again, it links through to your website so they can find out more. You have a character limit on Twitter, so you can, say as much as possible, but then feed them through to your website to get the rest of the information. Again, with Twitter, you can interact with people at all levels, and you can find the relevant hashtags that relates to your product or service that will get the attention of people who may not have already found your brand previously, but are searching for something like you. So make sure you're using Twitter in the right way. LinkedIn, one of my favorite social medias. I like social media. I'm a big fan, but LinkedIn, I have to say, is one of my favorite. So much so that in 2015, I was crowned top 10 most important power leaders on LinkedIn. Was it power leaders? I think so. I think powerful people on LinkedIn. Myself, Richard Branson and David Cameron. So not a bad list to be on. And that's because I truly believe in the importance of using LinkedIn, but not just as a marketing tool, but actually as a networking tool. Use it for what it's created for. So every time you meet someone face to face, add them onto LinkedIn within 24 hours and start networking with them. And it's not always about selling to them directly. There are much more discreet ways to sell, but we will talk about that later. But LinkedIn is a professional network. So unlike maybe Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, where you might have some of your personal information on there, you might have some pictures of you out on the weekend, on LinkedIn it's strictly professional. Business to business. So keep it professional and really use it to heighten your profile and your credibility. But LinkedIn is great. You can really find the people that you need on LinkedIn. So for example, if you are selling a product or service and you're trying to get into a brand, you can engage with people who are the decision makers of those brands. You can add them to your network, hopefully they add you back, and then you start connecting with them. Or you can upgrade to a different LinkedIn service and use InMail, where you can send messages to people you aren't connected with. There are so many ways to use LinkedIn. Many more are in the book or in Self-Made to really give you some more context. And then we have Instagram. Now, I think Instagram is fantastic, but it is very much a visual social media. So you have to be really great at creating great content that is visually creative, exciting and vibrant. So whether that's stills or video, you want to make sure you're engaging that audience and making them want to follow you to see more about what you're doing or what you're selling. So it works really well with food. Food, cosmetics, design, retail, all of those things that are visually appealing work really well on Instagram. And you can find that you can really build a great amount of following by having great Instagram posts, great content. I want to make it clear at this point that people get really anxious about following. They want to have a huge following, and that's great, but actually what's better than a huge following is an engaged following. So don't get really, down if you feel like you've only got a few hundred followers. A few hundred followers that purchase your product or service is better than tens of thousands who never buy anything but give you a few likes. Really bear that in mind. I think people really panic about that. So make sure you have engaged following, not just followers that like your stuff. So the art of discreet selling. I mentioned this briefly just a second ago about LinkedIn. I think it's so important that you understand the art of selling your story as opposed to trying to directly sell your product or service. So for example, if you follow me, you might find that I will regularly post about new events that I'm doing, if I'm speaking somewhere or if I'm doing a webinar, and I will just talk about the fact that I'm doing the webinar or the talk and the deliverables. I will say today I was at NormaNet, I was working with the .uk family on some fantastic new content that's coming out in the next year or so, and I'm not selling you anything, I'm just providing great information. I will talk about maybe if I'm doing a keynote somewhere and I will talk about the topics. Again, I'm not directly selling anything, but if someone reads that post and thinks, actually, Bianca will be fantastic for my business, well, maybe we should contact her, invite her in, that is a way of selling, but discreetly. There are a lot of brands that really understand the importance of the story. So Innocent being one of them. Innocent have a fantastic story about two men who had this idea for creating this drinks brand. They went to a festival and they had the drinks, they were giving people samples, and they had two bins. One said yes, one said no. And it said, do we start this business, yes or no? And the number of people that threw their cup into the relevant bin was the deciding factor on whether they started the brand. But in addition to that, the brand was all about making sure that they had drinks that didn't have lots of preservatives but were natural, fresh juices, not from concentrate. And that is their brand story. Dyson, is really about providing revolutionary technology and having a bagless vacuum cleaner. All of these things, these stories are often more powerful than trying to directly sell. I would say that now in today's current economic climate, especially millennials, they want to connect with a story. They want to feel like there's a real person behind the brand. They want to understand what led them to creating the brand, and they really want to buy into you and your story as well as the end brand. So don't concentrate only on trying to sell. If you keep just trying to direct sell, you'll often start to realize you'll lose your audience. You want to engage them with great content, free content, and then, in addition to that, they will then think, okay, I've got some free content now. Now, how can I engage further? And I think that is a great way of selling. So understand the importance of your story. And if you decide you want to start speaking, your story becomes even more valuable because you can communicate why you did it. Always start with why. People want to hear your story and why you did it and how they can get involved. Personal or personable. I think it's so important to be personable online and to interact with your followers. So it's not enough to just put out content, but actually to respond, to build a genuine relationship and interact online is such an important part of building an online brand. Don't just kind of leave it to someone else to do. And if you do leave it to someone else to do and you have a social media manager, that's fine. But make sure they're interacting with the people that are contacting you. If someone likes your piece of commentary online, or if someone sends you a comment, respond accordingly. Make sure it feels like a personal response, non-automated response. People want to feel like you're engaging with them. And that engagement is really what starts to build the brand further. If people feel that they can genuinely contact you and connect with you, that's when they feel like they want to endorse you, tell other people about you, and really start to build that brand. So definitely make sure you're personal and personable. Networking online. Now I'm a big fan of networking. I think networking is so important. It kind of goes back a little bit to what I said about discreet selling and selling your story. I'm a big believer in having an elevator pitch that you can use to really sell yourself as well as your product or service. There's a picture there of me at number 10 Downing Street last week when I met Theresa May, our Prime Minister, and I gave her my elevator pitch about SMEs and business and what I've been doing. It's so important to be prepared with an elevator pitch, to really be able to market yourself and your brand whenever that interaction is necessary. But I believe it's important to network online as well as offline. So online as in the internet, as well as face-to-face. And so when you're building your online profile, it's so important that you clearly illustrate who you are, what you do, and why you do it. I find a lot of people just go online and they're really only just talking about the brand. They're not thinking about the why. Why would someone want to engage with you? What is it you have to offer? Why would they buy it from you as opposed to someone else who offers something similar? Really start asking yourself those questions. And when you're reading your profile, whether that's on LinkedIn or on your website, you're reading through the product or service you offer, make sure it's really clear what you are, what you do, and why you do it, so that your customers know how to engage with you and how to interact with you. So definitely think about building your brand online, because that is where a lot of people start. So even if you meet someone face to face, engage them online as well. And if you met them online and then you meet them face to face, either way, make sure you're building your network and building your credibility. Don't just start your profile, especially on LinkedIn, and just put one word and nothing else. So make sure that your social profiles that link to your website are strong, and make sure your website is even stronger. So people are on your website and they can truly understand what you have to offer. Connect with the relevant people you meet in person via social media and via email. And when I say via email, I want to make this really clear, because one of my biggest bugbears was when people don't have a professional email address. So the reason why I think having a website is so important is because it allows you to have that professionalism. It allows you to navigate people to your brand. And if you have a Gmail or a Hotmail account that you're emailing from, that really defeats the object, because you're now basically encouraging and promoting another brand that isn't your own. So make sure you have your brand website, and make sure you have an email address that is also branded via your domain. So for example, a bianca@biancamiller.uk email address is illustrative of the fact that it's a professional website and people can look at the professional email and it really all syncs up beautifully. So that really does add to your credibility. So connect with people you've met online as well as via email, and then encourage them to have a look at your website and to ask for more information. Ask the right questions of your network. Interact and not just sell. I think that's so important that you interact. I said it a bit before, but when we're talking about networking, it's important that you're interacting with your end consumer, not just selling directly to them, but actually building those relationships. Because actually, you don't know who those people might know, and you don't know who might be relevant for your product or service. So for example, you might meet someone today and they might not be the buyer. They might not buy your product or service, but they might know someone who can or will. So you want to make sure you're building relationships that encourages them to want to refer you. You never know where your referrals are going to come from. And actually, referral marketing is probably the cheapest marketing. So make sure you are hitting the nail on the head and building those relationships. Engage followers are more important than volume. I said that before. It clearly is something that irritates me. So make sure you're engaging your followers. Make sure you're building those relationships with them. Don't concentrate on volume only. Try to make sure you have an engaged audience, not just a high number audience. Be prepared to take your online network offline. So I said that. Make sure that you are building a network online and offline, and be prepared for both interactions because they're both important. But remember that people do Google. If you have a meeting coming up, I'm sure you've done it. You've got a meeting coming up. You've typed that person's name into Google before the meeting. You want to see what it says about them. And you want to make sure that if you type your name in now or your business brand, you want to make sure that what comes up is a great illustration of who you are and what you offer. And I think that's a great test. So make sure you're doing that regularly. You're typing your name or your brand name into Google or other search engines, and you are finding out what comes up about you. And if it's not the right information, you want to make sure you're doing something about that. And you want to make sure you're working on your website to get you to the top of that search engine. And with that in mind, we're brought on to blogging and SEO blogging. So SEO is search engine optimization. And I think there's two things that are really important about blogging. And I'll make it clear the difference between the two. So there are blogs that are created solely to increase your search engine optimization. They are created to ensure that if an end consumer types in some keywords into a search engine, you are coming up close to the top of that search engine. That is the purpose for writing a blog specifically for SEO reasons. And that is to create content that drives more website traffic. Fundamentally, the internet world is quite crowded, and you want to make sure that if someone's typing in a keyword, you're coming up first, second, third. You want to make sure you're coming up at least on that first page of that search engine. And so writing blogs that are content efficient and have the right keywords and drive traffic to your website is an ideal way to do that. But there are also the blogs that are written for content, to engage the audience, to tell them about your product or service. And sometimes it can be a bit of both, but fundamentally you want to make sure that your blogs are encouraging people to your website. So you might have a blog on your LinkedIn, you might promote it to Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, but fundamentally what you're hoping is that they will then go from there to your website to find out more about your product or service. So make sure you are building your website traffic to ensure that you're getting more users to your website on a regular basis, and then look at how you can convert those users into buying customers. So Google Analytics is a very important part of understanding how well built your website is from a traffic perspective. It's actually free to use, so I would encourage everyone to have some sort of analytical tracking on their website that shows you what people are searching for, how they get to your website, how long they are on the website for, and where they're clicking off. Because that's a very good indicator as to how well your website is doing. You want to really understand what your customer is doing and how their customer journey is on your website. So what are they looking at? How long are they looking? Why are they not buying? And if they are buying, fantastic. How long is it taking them to make that buying decision? What pages are they on for the longest? You want to really understand that customer journey on your website, because that's a crucial part of that buying process. It's a bit like when you go shopping. You go into a supermarket, for example, you'll see that the aisles are created in a way that creates a flow. Or actually, IKEA is a great example of this. You go into IKEA or IKEA, according to the advert, and you're walking through and they keep you trapped in there, but they keep you walking through the maze of different corridors and so on to ensure that you're still looking, you're buying, you're thinking about what to get next, and everything is placed in the right way. In the same way, your website should be a bit like that. Make sure that the flow is correct and your customers feel like they're getting great information quickly. Most people have limited patience, and therefore you want to ensure that your website is succinct but effective. So really make sure you're looking at your website, and maybe you're gaining external perspective from someone else who also has a look to see whether you're offering what they need as an end consumer. Brand ambassadors and social media. So there's another really interesting way of building your marketing plan that doesn't always involve a high expenditure, and that's actually getting influencers involved. So when I'm talking about influencers, for example, you might find on Instagram there are people who have maybe tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of millions or millions of followers. And you'll find that they will advertise different products or brands every now and again. They are social influencers, and they are a great way for you to build traction from an audience that you might not typically have had access to. So, for example, you can see on there on my Twitter, I have just short of 18,000 followers, and I can, as an influencer, talk about a different brand or product or service that I have found useful, and people who follow me who also interact with me may think, okay, well, Bianca's found that useful, let me take a look at that. In the same way, if you had a retail business, for example, or a makeup brand, maybe you're selling lipsticks, and you find that there's a beauty blogger online that has a great number of followers and great traction, and you want to gift them a lipstick, and they then talk about that lipstick, or they try that lipstick and they use it on their blog or vlog, you then have created an influencer that could talk about your brand and encourage their users, their followers, to interact with your brand. That is a great way of getting additional traction. That's a great way of getting those people to talk about your brand to their audience and get their audience to start thinking about how they can work with you. So if you're looking at, let me give you another example of how influencers can be used. So with Bianca Miller-London, I have a hosiery brand. We worked with a number of influencers. We did a campaign where we did a big photo shoot. So they were involved in the photo shoot, and as a result, they were given product and they were given images. And for those influencers, those images are something they could put on their Instagram and on their website, and it's new images and content for them. For us, it was images that we could use to put on our social media to promote the hosiery brand. And together, that meant that I was talking about them as a brand. Therefore, people would click onto their brand and have a look at what they have to offer. And similarly, they were talking about the Bianca Miller-London brand, and they were making sure they would at the brand, so tag the brand, and people could click on that and have a look at Bianca Miller-London. That sort of influencer type of business relationship can be really useful. There are some influencers that will charge to do a post for you. You have to look at your a value proposition and your return on investment and decide whether that's going to be worthwhile. But there are some influencers that will be happy to do it as a trade for a product or service. So really look at how you can start to garner those influencers and leverage their existing following to gain traction and sales for your business. Prioritizing and budget. Now, one of the biggest issues we find for small businesses or startups is often budget. And it can be difficult to understand how to utilize that budget in the most effective way. But I think it's so important that you have a clear understanding of what your budget is, how much you have to spend and how often. So if, for example, you've allocated a certain amount of money to your marketing expenditure, you have to decide how often you're willing to spend that amount of money. So if, for example, you have, £1,200 for the year, that means you have £100 to spend each month. You want to be thinking about how you're going to spend that £100 in the most effective way. So important that you track your budget and you think about how to use it in the right way. So be that going to exhibitions, it might be using the money on advertising spend online. It might be using Google AdWords to get your website to the top of the search engine, top of the search engine. It might be magazine advertising. Whatever you choose to spend that money on, it's really important you know how much you have to spend, how often, and then you allocate it accordingly. Because you don't want to spend everything at once and then not have enough to try and be consistent in your marketing approach. So work out where your money would be best spent, i.e. where you would get the most traction. Think about where your customers are. As I said at the beginning, if your customers are generally on Facebook or on Instagram, then you might want to utilize your marketing expenditure there. If you're finding that actually the search terms for your product or service is quite high on your search engine, you might choose to spend some advertising revenue there. So really think about where would get the most traction. But be economical. Look at the alternatives to spending money. And I find this is a really important tip actually for startups, is to think about other ways to get marketing your product or brand, your product or service, without actually spending any money. So they may be things like collaborations. So if you want to do a photo shoot, you might find that you can get someone who is new to the camera world, is a cameraman or camera woman who is new to the professional world of taking photos and needs some photographs for their portfolio and is willing to give up their time for those photographs. You might find there are some models or influencers who would like some photographs, and you might decide to collaborate all together and utilize those people to get your brand out there. You might find that you might have a reciprocal agreement scenario where you have something to offer, they have something to offer, and you trade services, or that's the trading of services. But the reciprocal agreements is you offer something in return for something else. It's really important that you think about how you can be the most economical and trade marketing opportunities in that way by leveraging each other's customer base. Cash flow is often the issue, so spend your money wisely and keep some for reserves so that should something happen that you haven't planned for, you have enough money set aside to be able to continue to grow your business. It's really important that you look at that bottom line. So we have lots of free help and advice on the website, which is www.theukdomain.uk/get-online. You'll find there's lots of great tips and manuals on there. And of course, we have, if you come to any of our events, there are lots of great pieces of literature that you can pick up. So we have your Getting Your Business Online for Dummies book, which is a fantastic book. We also have Why It's Important to Get Your Business Online. And of course, my book, debut book, Self-Made, which the UK domain are actually in, talking about building an online brand. So there's lots of great content out there. Make sure you're getting the right information. And there's a lot of free content out there, so you don't always have to pay, but it's important you're getting the right information from the right people, the people for whom it is tried and tested. They've been there, they've done it, and they know how to do it. You don't need to make your own mistakes because there's so much content out there. You can really learn from other people. So definitely have a look at those and definitely have a look at the website. And so before we go to the Q&A, I'm sure you have lots of questions. I can see a few questions have started to creep up on my screen already. So our next in the webinar series, we have building a great content plan. That's topic number 3. And then number 4, understanding how to analyze your website's performance. So 2 great topics coming up there. Make sure you're registering on the website so you can get involved in those sessions too. Without further ado, I'd like to open up the opportunity for a Q&A. So if you have any questions, please type them on your screens now and I'll be more than happy to answer them. So let's have a look on here. Okay, I've got a question in. When you started your business, what was your approach to promoting yourself online? Was there a logical sequence? How did you know what the steps were? And would you have done anything differently? That's a big question, very big question. Okay, I'll take them step by step. When I first started my business, what was my approach to promoting myself online? When I first started my business, I think I probably wasn't as discerning about which social media would be the best for me. So I basically opened all of them. So I had Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And actually, those are the 4 that I've continued to grow. But I started realizing how to interact with different customers on different social media platforms. And there is an art to it. So I found that I was able to really think about pushing myself online as a professional on LinkedIn and on Twitter. I was always talking about my brand. I was explaining my why. I was explaining to my target market why actually what I had to offer would resonate with them and why there was great synergy. And then I'd find on Instagram and Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, it was a little bit more about me as a person. So I think there was a little bit of a difference between the 2 platforms. And I started to have to work on that and really work out how to approach the different platforms and different audiences. So I really started talking about the business. I had been working for a large professional services organization for a number of years before I started my business. So now I had to almost rebrand. I had to talk about why what I was doing was relevant. I had to talk about the change in my career and why I'd chosen to make that change. I had to talk about who I felt would benefit the most from that product or service, but also talk about myself as an entrepreneur on that journey. And to be honest, at the beginning, I was very nervous about calling myself an entrepreneur or businesswoman. I felt that I was just someone on a journey in starting a business. It took a few years for me to really start to say, yes, I am a business owner, I'm a businesswoman. So it takes time. Don't feel like it should happen overnight. It's very much about developing your brand slowly, but consistently. I think consistency is so important. So be the same person you are online as you are face-to-face, via email, via phone, via website. Your consistency is so important. So have a great website that really illustrates that. How did I know what the steps were? To be honest, at the beginning, I didn't really know. A lot of it was trial and error. And that's really why I decided to write Self-Made, because I felt like there wasn't a book out there that provided a really easy guide on how to start a business, something that was written by someone who had done it. I wasn't just looking at it from an academic perspective, but had been through the process. I really wanted to illustrate the mistakes I'd made so that readers wouldn't have to make the same mistakes. And so I didn't know what the steps were, but I found my way. I used a lot of intuition, and then eventually I got there in the end. Would I have done anything differently? No, but that's easy to say now. But no, I wouldn't have done anything differently. I think what I've learnt has meant that my obstacles have allowed me to keep learning and to do things differently each time. So, another question. Okay, coming from Claire. Hi Claire, how are you doing? What advice can you give to someone who has little or no income but wants to start a business? Great question, Claire. I would say there are a lot of startup loan opportunities out there and a lot of government-led grants that I would look into. There are actually lots of pots of money and pots of funding available for businesses. It just really depends on what the business is. So you have to make sure that you're looking online, you're doing your research and finding the local authorities are a good place to start. Startup loans is another great place. You'll find that your local borough again might do grants. There are big lottery fund. There are so many places you can find pots of money. So I think it's important that you look at those. I would say it's very difficult to start a business on zero income. I think it helps to start with a little bit of a budget just to get things started, like your website. Things like social media, you can probably do yourself. Your website, there are tools out there that can help you to build it yourself, but you need a little bit of money to buy your domain, to look at your logo, to make you professional from the outset. So I think it's important to either save up a bit of money or maybe think about getting a small loan. The other alternative is start a business account and get a small overdraft, but make sure you have a plan. It's so important you have a plan before you start engaging in overdrafts and loans, because fundamentally you are going to have to pay those back. So make sure you have a plan of action for that. I hope that answers your question, Claire. So, Colin, what was your main motivation for starting your own business? Okay, my main motivation was I was in a corporate organisation that had academically very intelligent graduates, but they weren't always very good at understanding the impact of their personal brand and marketing themselves in the right way. And so I started working with those graduates on how to build their personal brand and therefore their credibility to increase their opportunities of getting promoted. Then I left there, went into recruitment, and I realised this wasn't a graduate issue. There were people of all ages in all careers who didn't understand the importance of building a personal brand that really made sure they had their best foot forward at every time. And so I started my business to really help people understand how to improve their personal brand. And that was school groups. So I went into schools, colleges and universities and helped young people understand personal branding from the perspective of gaining employment. I went into corporate organisations and helped people who are already employed understand how to maintain or build a personal brand to advance their career trajectory. I helped entrepreneurs with their personal brand to inspire them to better their business and so on. And that's really what motivated me. I had a desire to help people understand their goals and how to really make their life and their career the best possible. I hope that answers your question, Colin. So, Jacqueline, is it better for the organisation to take someone who knows how to promote your business online? Is it better for them? Okay, fine. You're saying, is it better to hire someone who knows what they're doing? It depends on budget. It depends on how much you have to spend. I would say that at the beginning, often what happens is as the CEO or the founder, you end up being everything. You're the bottle washer, you're the mail deliverer, you're the accountant, you're the brand specialist, you're everything to the brand. If you can afford to have someone who knows what they are doing, then that would help. But I would say there's great information out there. And I found that people who have, and I'm not just endorsing my own book, but have looked at books or online forums or visited the UK Domain website, there's so much content on there that can help you step by step through the process. You don't need to get or hire someone straight away. And I also think it's quite important as a CEO to know what's happening yourself. I always think it's important for my team to realise that at any stage of the business, I've done what I'm asking them to do. There's nothing I wouldn't do for my own business. And so therefore, when I'm asking them to do something, I know what the outcome is. I know what I'm expecting. So there's an element of doing it yourself helps you to understand the process and to make that process better. So I think it's never a bad thing to be able to do it yourself. Okay. Davidson. Hi, Davidson. I hope you're well. I'm working on a small local startup and I'm exploring local marketing techniques. What is your favourite way to advertise to local businesses? Oh, advertise local businesses. Okay. Davidson, I kind of need to know what your local startup is, but I'm going to answer it anyway. I think a great way to market locally is actually to find other brands that you can collaborate with. I think that for me has been a really interesting way of doing it, because you'll find that if, for example, you have, I don't know, you've made a chutney. So let's say you've made like a mango chutney or something to that description. I'm just plucking from thin air. You've got a mango chutney and you want to sell that mango chutney locally. You might want to think about any local food festivals that are happening. You might want to go to the local shops that are selling food products and offer your product or service to them. You might want to go to local restaurants that offer chutneys and work with them. There are lots of ways to work with local brands. You might want to go to a local butcher who sell a product, a meat product that would complement your chutney, and therefore you now have a working relationship with them that allows you to market locally without you spending a lot of money. I think collaboration is a very important part of establishing your local business network. Another great way of advertising locally, of course, online, is to make sure that your blogs are written with a local focus. So utilize the search terms that are most relevant in that local area. So my business is in Croydon. So if I were to start marketing my business for Croydon specifically, I would talk about hosiery, buying the best hosiery in Croydon, getting your nude shade in Croydon, personal branding in Croydon, entrepreneurs in Croydon. Those are sorts of keywords that I would use in my blogs to encourage anyone who's going online and typing in Croydon as an opportunity to make sure that they can actually start finding my website. Another great way is actually through directories. So you'll find there are directories like I think Yell, it's called Yell, it's not called Yellow Pages anymore, I'm showing my age. Yell and Thompson Local, those sorts of directories, there's lots of them online. You can actually register for a directory free of charge for a very limited profile, and you have your business address in there. Same for Google Places actually, you have your business address in there, and therefore someone types in looking for, I don't know, a nail bar in Croydon, you will come up because you're a nail bar in Croydon based on your directory and also your listing on Google. So make sure you're doing a bit of both. I think it's really important that way to engage local businesses. Okay, I'm conscious of time, I need to speed up. All right, how do I suggest contacting influencers? Thank you, Stacey, for that one. So the way I contact influencers is I find an influencer I like the look of on Instagram or Twitter. Often they'll have an email address and I pop them an email and I make it very clear what the value proposition is. I think don't just say, so hi, I'm really interested in working with you. Will you promote my brand? Can I send you some product? Don't do that, because you will end up sending product to any and everyone. What you need to do is be very clear about what the value proposition is, what you're offering them and what you expect in return. So for example, I would only ever provide a product or service to someone if they have agreed, especially if you're paying them, if they've agreed to delivering a certain number of posts which stay live for a certain period of time. So, as an example, my husband has a chauffeur car company and he works a lot with influencers, and he will work with them in providing them with a luxury vehicle for their night out, and in return their expectation is they will post X amount of times and those posts will remain on their social media for a period of time, or they'll post on their story and that story will remain for 24 hours. Whatever the negotiation is, you want to make sure it's very clear and contracted. You don't want to end up just giving product to people who will never use it. So make sure you're very clear about what you have to offer and what you expect in return. Okay. All right, I've got another one. How do I sign up for other webinars, please? Just click on the website. We'll pop you a message directly to make sure that you've got that website link on there. Make sure you are registering for these webinars because they really are good. All right, how did I decide on the name for my company? Gosh, to be honest, it's a really long answer, and I actually ended up changing my business name. So I find that people spend far too much time on naming their business. Funny, that coming from me who changed my business name. However, as Shakespeare once said, what's in a rose? A rose, what's in a name? A rose by any other name would smell just as sweet. Don't spend all your time naming your business and not get to starting your business. You can always rebrand and rename if you need to. But start with a name that you are happy with, but most importantly, start with a name that you have researched. So make sure there is no trademark already registered in that name, because that could end up with you having a trademark infringement problem. So make sure you've looked at the trademarks. Make sure that the name is available as a website. That's really important. So go to your preferred registrar. That might be GoDaddy or 123Reg or any of the above, And go on there and try and make sure that you can actually register your website. Make sure it's not already been taken by someone else, because the last thing you want to do is start telling everyone about your fantastic new brand and then finding that there's no website domain available and that all the social media has been taken. So choose your name or choose a couple of names and then check their availability for website and social media so you have consistency across all of the platforms. So how did I choose my name? I started out with a different name. It was called Be Styled UK. I thought it would work really well because I thought styling would resonate, as a personal brand is about styling yourself in the best way across the platforms, but actually it just didn't work. It didn't work for schools, colleges, universities and corporates because they just thought it was about styling. So I had to rebrand as the B Group, and that then led to me having Be Styled as a styling arm. That's where our stylists take people shopping. Be Branded as the personal branding work we do with corporates, and Be Employed as the work we do with students. So as I said, choosing a name is important, but it's not the end of the world should you choose to change it in the future. But choose something that you like, that resonates with the brand and that makes sense. With Bianca Miller-London, I had become known as the tights lady because of The Apprentice, and so I chose to call the brand Bianca Miller-London as a result. But choose something you like and choose something that's unique, ideally. Especially if it's a tech-based organisation, you want to choose something that may not actually be a word or may not be a word that resonates with that particular audience. So you think about Amazon, doesn't mean anything to do with online sales, but now only thing you think about really when you think of Amazon is buying things online, and the rainforest, of course. Or you think about Uber. You know, Uber is a word, but you wouldn't have connected that originally with taxi services. So just think about a sort of name that would work for you, that works with the brand, and that makes sense for you. All right, let's see. How much time have we got? No time. I'm going to answer one more question just because I'm cheeky and hope that they don't just cut me off. We're not going to cut me off, are we? No. Great. All right, so. Okay. How do you distinguish your personal brand from your business brand? Okay, fantastic final question to answer. So how to distinguish your personal brand from your business brand? It's really interesting. So I'll give you a bit of an example of what a personal brand and business brand is. So if you take Apple, for example, Apple is the company brand, the iPhone is the product brand, and Steve Jobs is the personal brand. So when you think about building a brand, I believe that people buy people, and your personal brand story is just as important as your company brand. But the way that works and the way that it's distinguished is, for example, I, Bianca Miller-Cole, I am the personal brand. I am the person behind or in front of the business. I am the CEO and the visionary, but my business stands alone separately. So the B Group, Bianca Miller-London, Self-Made, they're all separate entities that we market on their own in their own right. But fundamentally, the story starts with me. So the way that I communicate my personal brand story and my reasons for starting those businesses, that is very much about my personal brand. And that's it really is about my why, my personal desires, my personal frustrations, how I went about solving the existing problem. And then when you think about the company brand separately from that, the company brand is really about why the brand is important. What distinguishes this brand from other brands that offer a similar product or service? You know, why would someone want to buy from that brand as opposed to another brand? That's when you see the difference between the two. So personal brand is about you, the face of the business. The company brand is the entity. And they both need marketing separately. And sometimes you'll find that there is collaboration between the two because obviously the person created the brand. But fundamentally, they are two separate things. So make sure you are dedicating time to building your brand. Your LinkedIn profile should be just about you as much as it is about the company. And then you have your company brand, and that's why the company has separate Instagrams, Twitters, and so on. And it's so important to separate the two, just finally, because you might, in the future, end up floating your company and or you might end up selling your company. And if you just had one social media or one website that was just about you, how would you separate the two? So it's important that you have that separation so that a business is its own entity and you are your own entity also. I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much for everyone that joined us on this lunchtime webinar. It has been an absolute pleasure. I'm very conscious that I had a lot of content to get through in a short amount of time, but I'm hoping it all makes sense to you. But if it doesn't, we have a fantastic opportunity for you to get more involved using hashtag #AskTheUKDomain. You can ask any questions you have to us using that hashtag across the social media platforms, and we, the UK Domain, NormaNet, and I would be more than happy to answer those for you. And of course, there is lots of great content online and in book form. So if you are not sure what to do next, jump online, go onto the UK Domain website, or have a look at some pieces of great literature out there. Best of luck. Take care.